How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And since we've had a very unfortunate ending to the DCEU, I figured now would be the time to rank every movie in the DCEU and show in the DCEU, actually. So we've had our final film recently come out, which is Aquaman 2, or Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And this one, regardless of how this wrapped up the DCEU, we'll get to that. But it's the end of the DCU. Now would be a better time than ever to release my final ranking of the DCEU. So let's just dive right in. So today we're going to be going in tier ranking style. So we have at the top Fortress of Solitude. So the top, nothing can beat it. Bullets bouncing off my chest, just really fun, really badass, great movie. Rock Solid, referring to the Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Swimming with the Fish, pretty okay. Release the blank cut, kind of, explanatory. And then Kryptonite, which is the worst in this franchise. So let's kick it off with a banger, shall we? So we have Man of Steel, which arguably is the best film in this franchise, and I'm going to put it up in the Fortress of Solitude because, Superman. Why not? So this movie was my favorite of the DCU for the longest time, and then it got overtaken by one movie, but we will talk about that in a second. But this movie made me like Superman. I was never a Superman kid. I never really liked Superman that much because I just thought he was super overpowered, and I didn't really like that. But then I saw this movie, and that completely changed. Now I'm a big Superman fan, actually, because of this movie, and I think that this movie really grounded Superman and made him such a relatable person and character as, he's going through these different challenges of, humanity and whether he should use his powers for good or not. He's got two fathers, one telling him to use his powers and the other not to, and, it's very conflicting, very Christian-esque themes, and then, you have General Zod, which is a great, great villain in this universe in general, honestly, and honestly, I think this movie is genuinely fantastic. I know a lot of people really complained about the third act, about why is it so destructive if the whole movie was, like, so Christian-esque, and it's like, what do you think would happen if two godlike beings would be in a city setting? Like, do you not think that there's going to be a lot of destruction? Plus, it's a Zack Snyder movie, so there's going to be some more action sequences. But still, like, what are you expecting with that, man? I don't even understand. Moving right along to a movie that I would have included two different cuts for, but we're just going to talk about the better version of it, and that is Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, I'm going to put this one in bullets bouncing off my chest because, for one, the theatrical cut is a piece of crap, okay? That movie is non-existent in my opinion. The Ultimate Edition is where it's at, because the Ultimate Edition is vastly superior. I did watch the theatrical cut in the theaters, and I really did not enjoy it, and then rewatching it with the Ultimate version instead, the Ultimate Edition, made it 10 times better, because that half hour that they shaved off gave so much context to what was going on in the movie, and I really understood what was going on with this, and it worked so much better for me. So I absolutely love the Ultimate Edition. Not perfect by any means. It's pretty flawed. But regardless, I think that this film in general is really, really cool. It's kind of a shame, though, that they had this, like, the second movie in the franchise, because in the universe in general, because it's kind of rushed. The fact that, you have a Batman versus Superman, the death of Superman, the dawn of the Justice League, the showing up, the Justice League showing up, like, it's a little rushed. I think, honestly, it's a little bit rushed, but, honestly, I still think that the movie is phenomenal. I think it works really well as a movie, by itself. I mean, it really, really works. I just kind of wish that they had done, like, a Batman movie prior, or movies setting up the Justice League prior to this one, because it did so many things at once that just kind of held it back a little bit. But in a 3-hour movie, kind of fits. So I really enjoyed this one. Next up, we have Suicide Squad. Not the Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad. So this is the David Ayer, the David Ayer film, right? Because, you know, from what we hear, David Ayer, this is not his version of the movie. And this is going and released the film, the blank cut. Now, with this movie, David Ayer has constantly said that this is not his version of the film. He has even said that the original version that he made is one of the best comic book movies ever made. We will probably never see that version of the movie. Unfortunately, because this universe is over, no one cares about this universe anymore, unless they're going to do a deal with Netflix, like they're going to do, like, apparently the Snyderverse with Netflix, which would make it really strange because next year we're getting like 3 different universes all in once. Like within like the next year or two, we're getting a Joker movie, which is in its own universe, a Batman movie, which is on its own universe, a Superman movie that's in its own universe that's setting up another universe. So it's going to get really, really complicated if we get so many different movies at once that are in separate universes. So I get if they don't want to release that version of the movie, but at the same time, it would be really cool because, you know, if we got the David Ayer cut, it would be freaking awesome. At this point, you probably can't recover the footage because it's been almost 10 years since they made this movie. It's just kind of a shame, though, because they used, like, pop songs in this movie to give, like, character growth, character development for some of these characters, and it's really stupid that they did that. The trailers did not sell this movie well at all because this movie ended up being a piece of crap, so big difference between the marketing and the movie itself. The first act is fine. You know, you get some pretty cool performances in general in the whole movie. The rest of the movie, though, besides the first act, is like just this big city sequence, and it's like really, really weird. That they have like this entire like not even second half, like 2/3 of the movie set in this city that's like a giant battle, and it's weird. It's just really, really strange that they decided to do that with this movie, but I have not seen the extended cut or whatever that's like 10 minutes longer or something like that. I could be wrong, but I do know that there's an actual extended cut out there, but I've heard it doesn't add a whole lot to the actual movie. So, yeah, might see it, might not sure, but it is what it is. After Suicide Squad, we have Wonder Woman from Patty Jenkins. Now, this one I know a lot of people have said in the past is like their favorite DCEU film. And I kind of get why, but at the same time, I don't. Because I think this movie has some issues. So I'm going to put it in rock solid. Now, this movie is rock solid. I think that most of the movie really, really works. It works as a period piece drama, period piece war film set in World War One. The action sequences are phenomenal. Gal Gadot is great, and so is Chris Pine. I really enjoyed their performances and their chemistry together. But where the movie kind of lacks is the third act, and I think that is its biggest fault because the movie, regardless of that, is really, really good. It's just the villain, the twist villain with Ares or whatever, is kind of stupid, and it just turns pretty generic. But honestly, it's not enough to like drag this movie down completely. It's just ends up not being one of my favorites of the franchise or the universe in general. So I really enjoyed this film, though. Not one that I'll personally pick to rewatch every time that I want to go for a DCEU film, but it's one that I really like. And next up here, we have another film that was completely botched by the studio, Justice League. We're going to throw you in Kryptonite because this is definitively the worst film in this entire universe. I mean, bar none, this is the worst. I mean, a movie as a movie itself, it's not entirely terrible. It's got some redeeming elements to it. I mean, you've got some pretty decent action sequences. You got some pretty decent performances. But once you get into the deep dive behind the scenes of this movie, and you get Zack Snyder leaving the project because one of his family members passes away, and WB really does not like Zack Snyder because his previous film was kind of a failure at the box office. So they rehire and they get Joss Whedon to literally delete 3 hours of footage in this film and do another hour of his own, making this under 2 hours long, which this story is a 4 hour long story that needs to be a 4 hour long movie, which we will talk about later. But they completely botched this movie, and it is a Frankenstein mess of a movie that is unforgivable to me. And I despise this movie with all my heart. Probably my least favorite film of all time that isn't Star Wars The Last Jedi, because we do not want to talk about Star Wars The Last Jedi or Skywalker or Rise of Skywalker, whatever that movie's called. But yeah, this movie is a pile of shit. I hate this movie. Moving along from the crap stain that was Justice League into Aquaman, which I think is a genuinely fun movie. I'm going to throw you into Rock Solid, right next to Wonder Woman. And this movie is kind of like a duel of fates with Wonder Woman, because they're kind of in the same tier to me. Honestly, if I could put another tier between Rock Solid and the bullets bouncing off my chest or whatever, these two movies would be in there, because they are really, really good movies. And honestly, it's just their kind of significant faults bring them down a little bit. Unfortunately, with Aquaman, I will say the villain is kind of forgettable, and you've got Amber Heard in the movie. And that's pretty much it. The movie itself is a really fun time. It's a really fun little globe-trotting adventure that provides a bunch of laughs. You know, it's got really good visuals. Jason Momoa is great. The whole cast is genuinely great, besides Amber Heard, which Amber Heard. But the movie itself is a really, really fun time, and I think it's genuinely just a really, really fun movie that I'll go back to rewatch every now and then. It's a fun movie to just like throw on while you're going to bed or something like that. It's just a really fun movie. It's a little bit long, but regardless, I have a really fun time with it every time I go back to see it. Moving right along, we have Shazam from 2019, and I'm going to throw this one into Rock Solid right behind Wonder Woman. I think that this is probably the biggest surprise of the DCEU, in that, we kind of just expected a pretty generic little movie, but in general, it turned out to be a pretty fun time. I think that this movie is just a really, really good, you know, superhero movie that looks generic, has kind of a generic villain, some really dark scenes aside, though, too, that just didn't really belong in the movie. I think it's a really good little family film that has the family and the heart in the forefront and the superhero stuff in the back, that both really, really work together. And, Zachary Levi is a really good actor to play as like a man-child at heart, but the movie as a whole is just a really, really fun time. It's like Big, but a superhero movie. And I think that, as a whole, this movie really, really works. I watch it every Christmas because I kind of consider it a Christmas movie. It takes place at wintertime. Yada, yada. I love this movie. It's great. Moving along, once again, we have Birds of Prey, which I'm going to also put into Rock Solid in between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, because I think this movie provides a ton of entertainment. Birds of Prey, the really enormously long name that has something to do with Harley Quinn in it, is a genuinely really fun time. It's got like a Guy Ritchie flair to it. It's a ton of fun. You got like the action choreographers from the John Wick movies that came in and did some action sequences for this one. Margot Robbie doing her own stunts, which was awesome to see. Black Mask is a really cool villain, and Ewan McGregor, man, like, I'm not even joking, he might be like the best villain in the entire DCU. I loved him in this movie. Where this one comes to a halt for me, unfortunately, is the Birds of Prey thing, which I don't know why they didn't just make this a Harley Quinn solo movie, just set up the Birds of Prey, like, in the movie still, and just have a Birds of Prey movie afterwards, like have this be a sequel. But the Birds of Prey is not the main focus of the movie. They are very much in like the background and then set up at the end, and they don't do anything with them, which is unfortunate, but is still really fun. So I do really enjoy this movie. It's a ton of fun. Margot Robbie's awesome. So yeah, I really enjoy this movie. I'm sorry. Not really sorry for my own opinion, but it's it's a ton of fun for a movie, and I'm sorry that the haters just really can't enjoy this movie. Moving along once again to an unfortunately pretty rough movie, we have Wonder Woman 1984, and I'm going to stick this one in Release the Blank Cut. Now, this one is an interesting story because this is probably what the director envisioned this movie to be. It's just a really fail, like, it's just kind of a fail of a movie because, in general, this movie is not great. I mean, production wise, pretty good. Story wise, acting wise, visual wise, it's not great. Character wise, again, not great. Um, it takes pretty much everything that I really enjoyed about the first one, but just like tones it back and makes it super generic and super lackluster. Honestly, like the villains in this movie are super weird, and if you really like take a look for like more than 2 seconds at this movie, you'd realize how weird and gross some of the plot points in this movie are. I really don't enjoy this movie. I've only seen it like once or twice, and I've not really enjoyed it any time that I've seen it. So yeah, unfortunately, it goes down toward the bottom. And it really sucks too because this is like the first big blockbuster that kind of just like brought theaters back. This is like right at the tail end of COVID, at the end of 2020, I should say. Uh, this is just kind of an unfortunate film, unfortunately. Anyways, chugging right along, we have the better version of the Justice League with Zack Snyder's Justice League. And honestly, this is my favorite film in the DCEU. Come at me, Zack Snyder haters. I don't care what you got to say. I love Zack Snyder. I love his version of the Justice League. I think that this movie is actually perfect. 4 hours of an epic story that I did not expect to be nearly as good as it was, and I don't think anyone really did. Basically, just take everything that I said about Justice League and reverse it. You get Zack Snyder getting like a $70 million budget to re-edit, refilm, like get everything back to his version of the Justice League film that he made, and it's fantastic. This movie is genuinely amazing. Um, I mean, even like I love everything from the story to just like the 4:3 aspect ratio to this movie. I think this movie's amazing. Genuinely one of the most perfect films ever, and arguably my favorite DC film to date. Next up, we have James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Now, this one was actually a big surprise because, coming off of Suicide Squad from 2016, I wasn't expecting this one to be nearly as good as it was. I mean, I had faith in James Gunn. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. And this one's going in the Fortress of Solitude. I think this is one of the better films in DC history, honestly. Probably in like my top 10 DC films of all time. Genuinely just a really fun story. James Gunn provides, like his unique sense of writing and direction for like a sort of story with like these characters that are like the D-list characters, but you put them together in a movie and you make them A-listers. Just taking a band of misfits that kind of just belong together, and that's his specialty. And I really, really enjoy this about the. I really enjoy that about this movie, and I think it's genuinely like one of the most funny movies I've ever seen as well. And also being heartfelt at the same time, and I think it's genuinely an awesome film. Nothing less, nothing more, nothing less. Awesome. I love this movie. And actually, this is the most recent film that I watched on this list, or actually rewatched. Um, I kind of just wanted like a refresher before I made this list. But yeah, I love the Suicide Squad. Even rewatch 2 years later still works fantastically. So I love this film. Next up is unfortunately the only show that was released in the DCEU, and that is Peacemaker season 1, or it might be the complete I don't know. James Gunn has confirmed a season 2 and has said that it's supposed to be in the new DCU, but there's no confirmation of that. Anyways, season 1 is going bullets bouncing off my chest. I think this movie, or this show rather, is genuinely awesome. I think other than a little bit of a lackluster finale, some weird plot points in that one, not entirely loving it. I still think that this season of the show is fantastic. I think, once again, James Gunn provides like his sense of writing and direction for a band of misfits that shouldn't be A-listers or more like D-listers, and bring them together and make this family and make a great show, great movie, regardless what it is. And I think this show, not movie, this show is awesome. I think the first 7 episodes are genuinely perfect. Episode 8, it's kind of all over the place for me, but I still do like it. So it's still a strong episode, honestly. It's just not as strong as the others. Still really enjoy the show as a whole, though. So yeah, going in the bullets bouncing off my chest. And now going back to the movies in this series, we have Black Adam. Now, this one is an interesting movie to say the least because, on one hand, it was being made for a very, very long time. And, The Rock was casted in this role for a very, very long time. And it's going in the swimming with the fish tier. It's just an interesting story because, this was confirmed to be like in production before the entire DCEU was a thing, and it's actually kind of surprising that this exists because like in its state, because it feels like an old fashioned superhero movie like from the early 2000s, and it was literally starting to be made in the 2000s. So it's kind of an interesting story, but at the same time, not one that I love. It's kind of unfortunate, but it's just never been like a great movie to me. It's enjoyable, but not amazing. Uh, The Rock is good. Pierce Brosnan, I think, is actually really good in this movie as Dr. Fate. The action sequences are pretty good. Visuals are pretty good. It's just a very generic story, and I mean, I'm glad it's made. I'm glad it's been made. It's just kind of forgettable and generic. The only time I ever think about this movie is when I look at my shelf and I see like my 4K copy of the movie, or when I'm thinking about the DCU and it's like, oh yeah, Black Adam exists. Okay. Anyway, yeah, this movie is pretty forgettable, but it's a pretty fun enough time. I think I've only seen it twice, maybe twice. I really don't know, but it's fun. I'll give it that. So yeah, fun enough movie. And now going into 2023, the movies of 2023 in the DCEU, with like the big flops for the DCEU, unfortunately, and those are starting off with Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Now, this one is very, very generic. I'll just say that right off the bat. It's going to go in swimming with the fish under Black Adam. Honestly, I I like this movie enough. I mean, it's fine. Like, the only thing that I have against it is the fact that they just make this a very generic movie compared to like, you know, um compared to something like the rest of I mean, compared to just like the first Shazam. It's just a very generic film. And I hate that they took such like a fun little family concept about that and stripped that of being what it is, what made that first movie so good, and just make it super generic. And it's rather unfortunate, but it's fun. It's generic but fun. I have a good time with it. So it gets a pass for me, but I get why some people don't like this movie in the slightest, and I get why some people really like it. I'm right down the middle on it. I think it's okay. But regardless, I respect your opinion on it. It's a fun enough movie for me. Moving on to what's probably the most divisive film in the entire universe, and that is The Flash from Andy Muschietti. Now I know this movie has really terrible CGI. This movie is still bullets bouncing off my chest because the story in this movie is probably the best story in the DCEU besides Man of Steel and Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think that the story in this film is genuinely fantastic. Regardless of like the first 15 minutes or so, it's just kind of like goofy shenanigans going on with the Flash. I think this movie's great. It's genuinely fantastic. I love it. And, bad CGI. I know. It looks like crap. But it doesn't bother me if, you have a really good movie at the center of it. If you have a really good story, really good characters, really good performances hiding behind the curtain of some really crap CGI, it works for me. I don't get why so many people absolutely despise this movie because there's some bad CGI. Like, that is literally the only reason I get when I ask, like, why do you hate this movie so much? It's like, oh, it's bad CGI and Ezra Miller's a bad guy. Okay, but that doesn't make the movie. Ezra Miller's good in the movie, I will say that. And if people find him annoying, it's because that's his character. He's learning to not be as annoying as he is because there's two Barrys. He learns to be less of Barry, and it works. So, I mean, like, it's. I don't know. It's just frustrating that so many people hate this for, like, genuinely no reason. And I love this movie. So, yeah, that's me. I mean, if you don't like this movie, fair enough. But if it's just because of CGI don't know what to say, man. Like, it's just kind of weird that people really don't like this because of just visuals, but whatever. Anyways, moving along to probably like the smallest bomb of these movies, which is Blue Beetle. And Blue Beetle was a fun movie. I really enjoyed it. It's going right in the bottom of rock solid. And I had a really fun theater experience with this one. It wasn't fantastic or anything, but I had a good time with it, and it's genuinely just a really fun film. And I personally enjoyed it. It's not for everybody, maybe, but it's still really good. If you really look past like the generic superhero story to it, I think the heart to it, the family core to it, is what really makes this movie really good, and it makes it more than generic because the family side to it is what really makes this movie. And I like that they focused on like the family in the movie. It's just that the story itself as a superhero movie is extremely generic. Like, we've seen this movie 20 times. But, the family side to it is what makes this movie. So I really enjoyed the family aspect to it. It's not for everybody, maybe, but I really like this movie. So, fair enough if you don't, but I enjoyed it. And the unfortunate finale, the cap to the entire DCEU, we have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And I'm just going to put this one in Swimming with the Fish. Now, it's not a great movie by any means. That's why it's going in like the middle tier. It's a fun enough movie. Um I mean, like, it's a fun enough movie, fun enough story, fun enough performances. Just a movie that is really unfortunately the final movie that we're getting in this universe. And honestly, it's a fine enough movie. It should be more for this final film, but it's a fun enough movie. I mean, you got Jason Momoa being Jason Momoa. He's fun in the movie. I had a lot of fun with him in the movie. But it's just kind of unfortunate that that this is the last DCEU film. I mean, Amber Heard's in the movie. It's like she's kind of like the main problem I had. It's got a generic villain. It's like, whatever. It's whatever to me. I think it's visually pleasing, fun to see on the big screen. There's some pretty cool action sequences. Um, some pretty gut busting moments in the movie too. Like some really funny moments. But yeah, I had a fun time with this movie. It's nothing special, but like I said though, Captain the DCU, it's really unfortunate that it is that way. And honestly, the DCU as a whole, going into how I think of the DCU as a whole, it's just kind of unfortunate that this is what we got because there's so many good movies, but there's such a rushed execution to try and catch up with Marvel. Like you have what could have probably been the buildup of what was like an entire phase of the MCU in 4 years in this. So, like, you have the Superman movie that started the whole thing off, but wasn't even supposed to be the start of a universe. And then you have a Batman vs Superman movie without even going with a Batman movie, and it's also supposed to be setting up the Justice League and has the death of Superman in it. Like, so many things going for it, but it should have been like, the fifth film or something like that, because then get a Wonder Woman movie in there, get a Batman movie in there, set up the other members of the Justice League before you introduce them, and then like just rushing out to get Justice League, and it's like really unfortunate that what we got though, like studio meddling, studio corporate shenanigans that really bothers, like really bugs this franchise, and like there's really weird tonal shifts between movies, and it's like you go for a really dark R-rated movie, and then you have something lighthearted like Birds of Prey and Aquaman, and like I don't know, it's just very strange how they executed this franchise. Even though I love some individual movies in this series, it's just really weird that they had so many movies that just really don't connect. And as a universe, you don't want that. So it just really ended up failing as a whole, even though the individual movies were fantastic for the most part, regardless of some pretty rough movies here and there. But regardless, I still really enjoyed this universe as a whole. Sad to see it go, but I'm excited to see James Gunn's big DCU, and I'm genuinely excited to see what he does with Superman Legacy and all of his other upcoming movies. So yeah. So here is my final ranking. So at the bottom, obviously Justice League, an atrocity that shouldn't have ever been made. Wonder Woman 1984 coming off of that, and then Suicide Squad, a movie that I can have fun with, so I'll edge it out over, Wonder Woman 84. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Black Adam, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, all kind of tied here in Swimming with the Fish. And then Blue Beetle, Shazam, Wonder Woman, Birds of Prey, and the enormously long name that has something to do with Harley Quinn, Aquaman, the first one, and then The Flash, Peacemaker, Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, not the theatrical edition, Suicide Squad, sorry, Man of Steel, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League. So thank you guys as always for watching, and if you're new to the channel, please hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more to the channel. If you're interested, talk movies, talk superheroes, DC, Marvel, all over. And then, let me know as well down in the comments section, what is your ranking of the DCEU, and why do you think the DCEU failed? Was it because of really weird tonal shifts? Was it because the studio meddling? What do you think the reason is? And yeah, thank you guys again for watching. So stay tuned for more, and peace out, everybody.